And we must first begin with the freakout over college football that happened this weekend. The number of hysterical tweets and reporter comments on television about football stadiums being packed. We had a year of no college football. Now, here's the thing. Keep in mind, overwhelmingly on college campuses, to get into the stands, you got to be vaccinated. To go to school, you got to be vaccinated. You got to have proof of vaccine. In Louisiana, LSU is forcing people to show proof of vaccine, or I think a negative COVID test within 48 or 72 hours, something like that. You got packed football stadiums, and across networks on television and across Twitter, people are freaked out. Here's Dr. Hotez on CBS.
There are concerns that people at some public gatherings are not taking precautions against COVID. Dr. Peter Hotez is a professor of pediatrics and molecular virology at Baylor College of Medicine, and he joins us now to discuss. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
So, Dr. Hotez, when you see these large crowds and packed stadiums, what goes through your mind?
Well, what goes through my mind, Vlad, is that we're having this incredible surge right now of COVID-19, although it's unevenly distributed in the United States. Right now in the South is on fire. And in terms of this raging epidemic, in terms of number of new cases, especially among young people. And now we've got 100,000 Americans in hospitals right now as we're speaking, and the deaths are climbing to over 1,500 deaths a day, almost all of them among the unvaccinated. And so it troubles me that we somehow have decided this is over, and the Delta variant now is surging across America.
And by the way, it's going down in southern states and starting to go up in northern states. You will not hear nearly as much pandemic-related media coverage when that happens, because Republican governors are in the South and Democratic governors are in the North, and the media will, of course, do their part, like they did with Andrew Cuomo, to cover up the catastrophe happening in the North when it happens. But you notice his statement that it's most of the deaths, overwhelmingly, they're the unvaccinated. Why can't we let the burden be on them? Let the risk be on them. To the extent there are vaccinated people who are getting the virus, there are very few. And to the extent that the vaccinated people die, there are even fewer. It is rare. Why can't we let the burden be on the unvaccinated? And yet there's a massive freak out about college campuses around the country allowing people into the stands, most of whom are vaccinated. By the way, it's younger people tend to be more vaccinated these days in these college settings. College-educated young people are getting vaccinated at higher rates. Why can't we just let people be at this point? Now, there is, in fairness, there are people who do make the case that hospitals are getting overwhelmed. And to the extent that you can get vaccinated, you are not overwhelming hospitals. And in fact, you are depriving people of space if you're unvaccinated, and that could be a problem. Yes, that is true. In fact, I do wonder if we're going to get to a point where if you're unvaccinated, you have to stay in the back of the line, get in the back of the bus for the vaccinated person. I think it's a dangerous precedent for our society to do that with this vaccine. I realize there are people who won't get it. And you're not going to bully them into getting it. You're not going to shame them into getting it. They have reasons they think are reasonable. I was talking to someone the other day who has a relative who says Jesus is going to protect him, but he had no explanation for why he had to take his heart medicine. Why wasn't Jesus going to protect him from that? But they've rationalized in their mind, and you're not going to persuade them. You're not going to bully them. You're not going to shame them. You shouldn't condemn them, and you shouldn't treat them like second-class citizens. Our society is revealing itself to be hyper-judgmental when it comes to these things, and showing a lack of grace. There are a lot of people who've been fed misinformation, and it's not their fault they believed it. They trust their friends. Their friends have been taking advantage of it. And don't say it's happening on the right. Have you heard the ivermectin story? There was a great freak out about the ivermectin story. A news publisher in Oklahoma ran a story that hospitals are seeing patients come in who have overdosed on ivermectin because they went to the feed and seed and they got the horse paste. They didn't go to their doctor and get a human prescription. They got the horse paste and they overdosed on the horse paste. And there are hospitals in Oklahoma that have seen these people. Well, it turned into a Rolling Stone story. Rolling Stone very lazily repackaged the local story from Oklahoma with a doctor's quotes. They made it into a more sensational story wherein the doctor says he has seen people die of gunshot wounds who couldn't get care in hospitals because of ivermectin overdoses. It turns out the story, it's not true. In fact, one hospital came out with a statement and said that doctor does not even work at the hospital and hasn't for a couple of months. He wouldn't know. Now, that doctor works at other hospitals, but if you follow back to the original story, the doctor doesn't say people were denied care. He says hospitals are full, and some of the people who are there are people who have overdosed on ivermectin. The national media turned this into a story of people are overwhelming hospitals with ivermectin overdoses, which is not true. Rachel Maddow ran that story. CNN ran that story. MSNBC generally ran that story. Rolling Stone ran that story. Very few of them have corrected it. In fact, CNN had on their fact checker who tried to criticize the people who exposed the story and never mentioned CNN itself ran the story. He criticized Rachel Maddow and MSNBC for pushing the story. The media has gone into freakout mode. And the big freakout over the weekend was the massive filled stands of college football fans without masks on, having fun, enjoying themselves. There's a freak out over joy. You know, some places, Portland, Oregon, I believe it is, the mayor, or no, is it Seattle? One of those northwestern states, a mayor has reimposed an outdoor mask mandate. There is no scientific evidence at all that wearing a mask outside is helpful. To the extent there's any study, there's this study out of Bangladesh that older people inside wearing masks helps them. There's never been data about outside. There's just a great collective freakout. And the great collective freakout, of course, is shaping the news coverage. You can't get honest news about what's happening and what's not happening. For example, in the South, did you know COVID is starting to recede? I've mentioned that, but that's actually the data. I'm here in Georgia. In Georgia, COVID is starting to recede. It is following patterns that other countries have seen with the Delta variant, that COVID is starting in the South as people go back outside. The weather's cooler. People are going outside. And so the trend lines are down. A 14-day change in the United States is a 12 percentage point drop. 12 percentage point drop. Now, part of that is Labor Day. But the South has seen a big decline. South Carolina has been spiking in the South. South Carolina is starting to level out and starting to crash. Around the country, North Carolina is doing well. Louisiana is improving. Georgia is improving. Texas is improving. And where is it starting to go up now? It's starting to go up in North Dakota. It's starting to go up in Washington State, in Oregon, in Maine, in West Virginia, in Ohio, in Indiana. But they would prefer you not talk about these sorts of things. There's a 136% increase in Maine right now. There's a 90% increase in Ohio. There's a 42% increase in Pennsylvania, a 39% increase in Colorado. Where's it starting to decline? Weird. There's a 48% decrease in Florida. There's a 48% decrease in Louisiana. There's a 36% decrease in New Mexico, a 35% decrease in Nevada. There's a 32% decrease in Tennessee. There's a 27% decrease in Georgia. These southern states? It's starting to go back down. Where is it starting to go up? New York, Minnesota, New Jersey, Maryland, Montana, Delaware, Wisconsin, Virginia. Isn't it weird how suddenly Texas and Florida are on the decline and the story's just gone away? as the areas where the media is have gone up. And now they're railing against college football. Part of me suspects there's a bit of wishful thinking in the press that college football in the South is going to cause it to explode again. And, they don't like college football. They'd rather us all play soccer. They don't like college football. The press doesn't. I mean, last year, you had the senior sports columnist for USA Today praising the Big Ten and attacking the SEC for their football decisions when the Big Ten said they weren't going to do it and the SEC was. And then when the Big Ten said, wait a second, we got to play too, she condemned them. The media wants to be freaked out. They want you to freak out. They don't want to offer any sort of calm. Why? You don't tune into the news when things are calm. We don't talk about ratings here a lot, but my ratings for this program were actually really freaking good. But, I look at that and I think it's the news cycle. It's not really me, it's the news cycle. The Afghanistan situation, all these situations have caused you to tune in. When you aren't scared, when you're not fearful, when you're not freaked out, you don't have to tune into the news as much. So TV and radio ratings, they go down as calm sets back in. So the media, if they want to keep the ratings up to boost the ad revenue, they got to keep you freaked out. And right now, they are hoping against hope that the massive crowds of college football are going to cause you to freak out and think that COVID's going to spread all over again. And by the way, we had crowds last year at some football stadiums and it didn't really happen. There are obviously bigger crowds this time, but I doubt it's going to happen. In fact, the data suggests it's a seasonal thing. And in the South, as people go back outside because temperatures cool down, you're starting to see it recede. And in the North, where temperatures cool down and people start going inside, you're starting to see it spike. It's almost like it's seasonal, cyclical, and we should be able to plan around it. But God forbid we say that.